Good morning and welcome back to Coffee with Toffees, the morning show for gamers by gamers, here to bring you the news that you need for your day. As always, I'm Toffees. You can follow me at Toffees_Dota2 for updates on when the show's going to be, matches, casting, all kinds of good stuff. And I'm joined today by one of my co-workers, I should say, because he's always here with me. It's Gorgon the Wonder Cow. How are you doing this morning?
I'm doing pretty well. Spent all night working on TI stuff and just kind of winding down my day here with a little coffee and Toffees.
Excellent. You'll take a little nap before the games start back up in 5 hours, I assume? I can only hope. So, that said, it's going to be it's kind of a shorter show. Well, theoretically a shorter show, though. We're going to get into talking about the matches, and that could take forever. Because it's TI, we're just focusing mainly on TI Dota 2 news for the ensuing couple of days, since there's just so many matches going on. So what I'll do real quick is we'll run through a kind of recap of what happened yesterday. I've got the table pulled up, but I will read it off for those of you who maybe are watching on the RSS feed once that's up and we load these in, or on YouTube. So the stack rankings as follows after yesterday is Cloud9 up on top, followed by VG Gaming. Cloud9's 4-1, so that's worth noting, and we'll talk a little more about Cloud9's 4-1 a little later today. Then you've got VG, Narvi is probably the best way to say it, so not as Sincere North America. Team Liquid, regular Navi, Invictus Gaming are all sitting at 3-1. So that's when we say Invictus is at sixth place. They're not really at sixth place. They're tied for second as we go into today. Then we've got EG, Newbie, and Fnatic who are at 3-2 in that 7-8-9 spot. And then the last person in the non-elimination spot is DK, like crazily enough, at 2-3. Currently sitting in danger of being eliminated is Titan at 2-2, and then after that is Empire, Mouse Sports, The Alliance, LGD Gaming, and Aero Gaming, who are sitting at 1-3, 1-4, and 0-5 respectively. Those are the teams that could be going home. Keep in mind, bottom 6 teams at the end of the 3 days will no longer be with us as far as advancing to the next series goes. So that's a pretty big deal. There's some pretty interesting numbers on there. So let's talk first and foremost. I know you did an article on it, so I'm going to let you be the expert. If you guys haven't already heard, right now a writer for Join Dota, Gorgon, wrote up a great article about the day one summaries for each team, I believe, and it's something that I think is warranted to read. So go over and check that out on Join Dota. I've got a page of it pulled up right now, but there's definitely more to see if you go over there.
Yeah, I spent pretty much all of the night doing research, going through all of these old games, running a whole bunch of stats on the games, looking at every single matchup that these guys had so that I could more appropriately kind of lay out the narratives that are kind of being drawn out. It's something I've been getting on my writers a lot about at Join Dota, that we're trying to be better about explaining the narratives that are happening to people in simpler ways so that it's easier to follow. And I think that the article that I wrote over there does a pretty good job of it. I don't know that there's a whole lot I can do to cover all of the distance without taking an hour to talk about all of the matchups, but
Let me ask you that. And let's talk about big upsets or teams that are in a place where we did not expect them to be when we started yesterday. Are there any teams that stand out that you're just like, holy cow, these guys are bringing it?
The two obvious teams for that, as far as I'm concerned, are Team Liquid and Cloud9. Right?
Absolutely.
So Cloud9, in first place, like, they're a good team. They've always been a good team, but they haven't really been performing quite to the old standards that we would have expected maybe 6 months ago, 7 months ago, whatever it was, when they were on top of the world. They have not been that strong for a while. We haven't really heard a whole lot out of them, and I think a lot of people expected them to kind of taper into 7 or 8 slots, somewhere around there. I don't think anybody expected them to be flat out eliminated out of the group stage, but nobody expected them to be number 1 at the end of day 1. And Liquid is even more astonishing. Like, they're the wild card, so they are literally coming in at bottom seat in this tournament, and they already had their hardest day, arguably. Like, they took out Team DK, Evil Geniuses, and Newbie, who at the time was undefeated with a 3-0 streak.
Right.
So, yeah, Team Liquid, if you go back and watch one game, go back and watch Liquid versus Newbie. I just spoiled the game for you. Like, everybody knows what's going to happen. It's still worth watching. It's that good.
It was a great game. That was the game that was going on at the same time as IGDK yesterday, I believe, correct?
Yep. Yeah.
So and those were both ridiculously good games. So if you guys want to go back and watch and you wanted to watch some really great games, that one for sure. The IGDK game was really good. Most of the games that Fnatic played were actually really close ones. So those would be some pretty good games to pull up. It was a really great day of Dota. I mean, other than one team in particular, I don't feel like there were all that many. And the strange debacle between Na'Vi and Liquid, I don't feel like there were any real walkovers to speak of.
Yeah, that's not really. I don't know that I would even consider that a debacle. I expected Na'Vi to walk over Liquid. I bet a ton of mythical rares on them. Like, the Liquid never beats Na'Vi. Like, they have never been able to take Na'Vi consistently. They've lost over 80% of the games with them over the history of the two teams matching.
Right.
It's in North America. There's a weird rock paper scissors thing where Na'Vi always beats Liquid. Liquid always beats Sna basically, and Sna always beats Na'Vi. I mean, not hard and fast, but more or less, it's a game of rock paper scissors. And Sna got seeded in the wrong position. They didn't end up in the international. They had to go up against their Kryptonite one too many times just because the way the brackets worked out. So.
Pretty crazy how that happens to play out. But that said, right now it is 3 U.S. teams looking like they're going to advance based on their performances yesterday, especially in terms of Na'Vi and Team Liquid, 2 dark horses that I don't think anybody expected to be in the 3-4 position after day 1. And they're sitting up there very comfortably, 1 win away from Cloud9 and essentially tied for second. So pretty impressive plays out of them. So dare I ask, who is your dark horse pick to come out of the seeding round in a really strong position?
Like, other than those two, who do I think could really fly? Fnatic.
Absolutely.
Fnatic's been playing very, very strong. I mean, you can't really consider Invictus, Evil Geniuses, Newbie, or DK, even though all of them are in bottom 7 to 10 slot, right? None of those could really be considered dark horses, right?
Right.
And Cloud9 and Vici are both up number 1, number 2, so they're not really dark horses just because they're positioning. So you're looking at, like, it's Na'Vi or Fnatic are really your options for who's going to be the dark horse between those two, because I really don't expect Titan, Empire, Mouse Sports, Alliance, LGD, or Arrow. I don't think any of them are going to get very highly seeded. So it just comes down to because of the parameters of the question. Fnatic just kind of filters in.
Well, but I think Fnatic did really well in their games. They did lose some, but I mean, honestly, Arrow was looking amazing, and it was anybody who was worried about him coming in and taking over for Excalibur, as he's not played with the team as much. I think that any critics were laid to rest yesterday in that first game that they played alone, and then the ensuing 3 were just he was playing all out and doing really, really well.
Yeah, I mean, they played like old Fnatic. They really did, and they I know one of our co-casters that we work a lot with over at SIBO, Chicago Ted's a big Fnatic fan, and he would not stop sending me spam yesterday, like, Fnatic, yeah.
And I mean, it's good. I mean, Fnatic's one of those teams that has a large fan base, and I think that a lot of them weren't necessarily worried, but took a little bit of a hit in kind of all of that chaos leading up to TI, and yesterday was a good day to be a Fnatic fan, that is for sure.
Yeah, I really did expect them to kind of fall off, and they didn't.
I did too.
Yeah. So.
Let me ask you this: did you have a chance at all to look at, say, strength of schedules yesterday? I know that you did notice that Liquid went through some of their hardest schedules, and I know that Na'Vi went through some of an easier lineup of sorts. Not to say that anything's easy in TI; all of these teams are world class, but I know the lineup was a little less intense than, say, Team Liquid's was.
Right. Na'Vi didn't have quite as intense of a lineup. VG is really the team that I would look at and point to and say they got it easy day 1. Like, VG, they're sitting in second place right now, 3-1. I guess they're tied for second place with a bunch of people, but they have a hard day today and they have a harder day tomorrow, and they have even the third day from now, the final day, still has, it's not the hardest day they've had, but they still have 2 hard matches then as well. And the difficulty is going to keep ramping up for them. So even though they're in second place now, I would not expect them to hold on to that by the end of the day. I'd expect to see them having dropped probably down to like a 5-6 range.
Make more sense.
Just because there are a couple teams that have easier days than them today, and they're just going to have harder and harder expectations coming out of them.
Yep, and I felt like Cloud9 had actually a pretty hard roster yesterday as well. So their 4-1 coming out of yesterday is really impressive to me. Especially, I mean, I guess I have that image of Eternal Envy at the end of ESL when they were eliminated, kind of like frozen in my head. How hard they've been taking things, and I didn't expect them to see them do as well as they are. But it's exciting to see. They're fan favorites. They're exciting to watch. And it's good to see them up on top. They're play-based. It was incredibly well-deserved. So, biggest surprise for you, I think, out of yesterday? Was there anything that you were just like, damn, I did not expect that, or this one person was playing out of their mind, or a pick that you weren't expecting?
You know, nothing really stands out because I didn't prepare anything in my mind. There was one really big upset that I saw. Mm-hmm. I don't remember what it is because it wasn't statistically important to me, but I remember looking at Dota 2 Lounge and saying like, oh, look, there's like an 18% odds on somebody who ended up winning, like one of the lower end teams. I think it might have been a Titan game, but I'm not positive. You know, I mean, Titan managed to grab themselves 2 games. I like Titan a lot. I did not expect them to take a lot of victories home, so I was happy to see that, but for the most part, and I guess the Razor, the prominence of Razor picks.
Yeah, I would say that
a little bit.
That was mine. I didn't expect to see. It's almost like everybody was trying to pocket Razor, holding him out for the final, holding him out for like TI, and then all of them decided that they had to see the same secret strategy or something, because it was a copious amount of Razor picks yesterday.
Well, Razor makes a lot of sense given the current meta to a certain degree. I mean, he does really well against, like, the Mirana Shadow Demon sort of situation. He also does very well against somebody like a Doombringer, who already has a really low base armor, and he needs to be able to have some attack in the late game, and he's going to end up getting a BKB. And Razor just needs to get off 1 spell, maybe 2 spells, and then it doesn't matter if he gets doomed. He's still going to be very effective in those team fights. So, in the face of that, the Razor is not all that surprising, right? I mean, he makes sense just given the basic playstyle. What he doesn't make a whole ton of sense for, at least as far as I'm concerned, is that he doesn't do the best job of contesting Roshan. He does an all-right job, but a lot of heroes like the Skywrath Mage, who was also very popular, and the Tidebringer, those sorts of guys with the big AoE stuff, the choke point spells, they do better around Roshan, and Loda was saying the other day, and I have a tendency to agree somewhat with this, that the meta is really very heavily oriented around Roshan right now. Yeah. And there's a big dire side advantage because people are really interested in getting those early Roshans, and the Razor doesn't really give you strength for that.
Makes sense. So I think, yes, for me the biggest surprise is, you know, seeing Razor picked up as much as he was. I wasn't surprised to see a lot of support anti-mage. I wasn't surprised to see a lot of the big watermelon, or as you might call him, Tidehunter, picked up constantly. We saw a lot of Refresher Orb Tidehunters yesterday, and those weren't too surprising. The biggest disappointment for me, and I guess I'll give you a second to think about yours, is right before the tournament started, after the 1v1s, the 1v1 champion S4 went on an interview and he said, I have amazing strategies to go up against every one of these teams because I just played against all of their mids, and this is in the bag basically. And right now they're sitting at 1-4, and that to me, I mean, they had a hard strength of schedule, like let's say that, but still, it was just I wanted Alliance to do so much better.
I mean, most of the what I would consider the world's best mids did not take the 1v1 mids competition very seriously, or who I would consider the world's best 1v1s, right? Like Dendi and Ice, neither of those guys took that at all seriously. I don't know if you know this, I was also the guy who did the 1v1 mid coverage at Join Dota while other people were covering like the real games. And the 1v1 mids are super fun and they're cheeky, but like, there is absolutely no seriousness to it whatsoever. So I suspect, I didn't see that interview that Loda was saying stuff like, or sorry, S4 was saying stuff like that. I suspected some of it was tongue-in-cheek.
I assume that it was. Still, though, disappointed by the overall performance of Alliance yesterday. Yeah. And it looks like First Panda just wrote into the show and said that her biggest surprise was the jungle support juggernaut from DK.
Hey,
I
you
missed
gotta
that.
have one of those. Once in a while.
I missed that game, so I didn't get to see it. But I did hear a lot of people talking about it as to whether or not it was effective. I don't know because I missed the game, and there's just too many to watch all the replays before the show in the morning. So I'd have to stay up all night like somebody else in the show, and I don't think I could do that.
Yeah, I actually have that up in one of my tabs, so I'm trying to search through it right now. But it'll probably take me forever to find it. So
that is fine. So do you have a biggest disappointment before we move on to talking about today's games?
I was hoping that more heroes would be drafted. There were 27 undrafted heroes so far in the first day. And granted, that's only in 1 day's worth of games. I was hoping for a little bit more diversity. I know that a lot of these teams are still holding on to their pocket strategies.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I don't know. I'd like to get that number down to like 15 before the end of the group stages.
Yeah.
I'm okay with 15 unused heroes, but this is probably the most diverse meta pool that we've had in a very long time.
Yeah, I mean,
and I really just want to drill into that.
Who thought we'd see like Org Magi, for instance, picked up twice in a day, whereas he's a hero that nobody would even talk about previously due to his RNG. So that said, it was a pretty interesting day yesterday. We'll keep an eye on that for tomorrow's recap. But for today, I'm not going to run through like we did yesterday. We went through every single game and made picks. I'm just going to talk about games that I think are going to be great features for the day that you might want to keep an eye on. So maybe my pick out of the 4, and then we'll talk about if I see any major upsets or worthwhile bets over on Dota. We'll talk about that as well. So do you have a schedule pulled up in front of you?
I don't, but I actually am in the process of writing this for Join Dota. So my picks are going to be up on Join Dota like
there you
45 minutes after the Coffee with Toffees, because I'm running through all the stats for day 1 that I've been doing over the night, and then I'm going to go through all of the games that I think. So I'm about halfway through the schedule already. I've got my picks already selected for
look at that.
The first 5 or 6 pairings.
So keep that in mind, guys. When you come to Coffees with Toffees, you get exclusive first rights with Join Dota publishings that are coming out soon.
Yeah, look at that. I'm actually shirking my work to be here to tell you guys what I'm working on. It's crazy.
You're just looking for input from the fans. That's all that is.
Yeah.
So talking about the first games out, I think that the one that I'm most interested in watching is going to be the showdown between Liquid and Fnatic. I think that's going to be a really good game. I think that the two are pretty evenly matched up, and I think that Fnatic has been playing really, really well. Liquid's coming in, obviously, off of a very strong schedule and on one heck of a roll, and I think that that's going to be a pretty good game.
Is that for the first group?
First group.
I think IG versus DK is my pick. Both of them are widely considered to be within the top 3, if not the top 2, for the tournament before day 1 group stage. It will be a very important placement match for these teams, because one of them is going to be able to move up toward the upper brackets, and one of them is going to be sent back down toward that bottom 7 to 9 slot area. And it should be an absolute slugfest, too. Like, these are two teams that play against each other, they know each other pretty well, and they're two of the best in the world. So I think just for purely looking at the strength of their the entertainment of the match, that was what I would go for.
Absolutely. So hold on a second. I think I'm looking at the schedule backwards on the JD. So let me pull that up, turn it back around, because for right now I'm showing IG Mouse right out of the gate. Is that not
yeah?
the
I might have my orders off here, because I'm just looking at the images that I've been making for my articles. Give me a second to figure out where I am here. All right, what did I select for the first one? Yeah, Liquid. Well, Liquid Fnatic was my pick there, I think.
Yeah. So I think that will be or should be a pretty good game. I think that'll be a nice one to watch. So we'll keep an eye on that. That's my recommendation there to get us started. And let's see. There's
Liquid Fnatic. I see what happened here. I have it set to the title of my image is 0 instead of 1. I counted like golf, so first stroke was free. Yeah, Liquid versus Fnatic was my pick out of that pairing.
You would count like golf. That makes perfect sense. So, sorry, I don't understand the Join Dota match ticker right now, or the match lineup, because it does the schedule. Why does it have to say 21 hours, 6 hours? What does that even mean?
It means from now. That comes up
now.
From now, because people are in different time zones. So
gotcha.
If you say stuff in CST, Americans have no idea what the hell's going on. It's just it's a fact. So we just say from now so that people can figure out what's going on.
Makes sense to me. All right, so let's flip that back over so you guys can keep an eye on that. So that's the first pick out. Interestingly enough, IG and Mouse Sports, if you go to Dota Lounge, is IG is coming in 82% over Mouse, which has got an 18%. Does that sound pretty accurate to you?
I mean, I expect IG to win that game. If you're looking for a ringer, or if you're looking for a long shot that has potential to pay out big, I mean, Mouse could certainly take it based on IG's performance.
Right.
But Mouse hasn't exactly been performing that well either. So I wouldn't put anything down on it, but I see it. Anything's possible in BF1s, right? So
right. So it could go anyway. That might be your value bet for the day. But once again, that is something that, it's up to you if you want to make that choice. I myself will not be. So second set of games is, I think my pick for going into that one was going to be probably Na'Vi Cloud9. I think that's going to be really good. The DK Arrow is going to be a rollover, I would imagine. And that Na'Vi, it's Na'Vi EU versus Cloud9. So they're teams who've met together. They both play in the same scene on a regular basis. They both have a lot of history behind them. And both of them are in the mix for those top 5 positions. So I think that's going to be a real test for Cloud9 and a great chance for Na'Vi to really step up and kind of re-exert their dominance.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good pick. If I were going to pick something other than that, it would be IG, EG. But I think Na'Vi Cloud9 is a good, because you're going to watch plenty of IG and EG.
Right.
Make sure, this is an important match for Cloud9 in particular. It's their first match of the day. They're coming out number 1 slot. They're going to have other people gunning for their slot very, very quickly because a lot of people are just 1 win behind them. If they don't win here, they could find themselves tumbling back into the ranks very quickly.
Absolutely. So I think that's a big game for them. So that's my choice for what to watch in the second section. As far as potential upsets go, can you see EG taking IG out?
Oh yeah, I could totally see EG taking IG out.
So
100%.
I think that's something that really, really could happen. Right now, it's a 61-39 over on Dota Lounge, so that might be...
It won't be that way for long.
Exactly.
I think watch the odds on that, because it's my understanding that if you bet on Dota Lounge and the odds shift, you don't get to retract your bet if the odds shift in a way you don't like. You can only switch team. So I would watch the odds on that before betting. Bet on that one closer to the
an hour before.
I think a lot of people, are going to be swinging the odds on that pretty quickly.
Makes sense. Yeah, if it stays that way, it seems like a good bet. So 7 hours from now into the third set of games, I think that the match to watch is probably going to be Na'Vi versus VG. The Fnatic LGD game could be good, though I think Fnatic's in a pretty good position there. Na'Vi should have no problem with Titan. I think Alliance should have no problem with Mouse. So the closest game is probably going to be Na'Vi versus VG, though it might also just be a good chance for you to go get your lunch.
Yeah, well, Na'Vi versus VG is also the game that I picked. But here's the important thing to keep in mind. A win here will keep VG near the top. A loss could easily put them the way of Newbie. Like, Newbie was up on top, now they're down the middle of the pack. That is basically where you are for VG as well, especially considering how easy of a day they had yesterday. So that is a really important match for them in particular.
Absolutely. So that's an important match. It will be the one to watch. So keep in mind, in addition to it being a potentially close game, it's going to be one that matters. And as we go into the next set, 8 hours from now, that's right, guys, we got another 12 hours. Yesterday, I am blown away, by the way, from Bruno, who was there from the start until the end of the last game doing the transitions for the multicast. That was a 12-hour shift, and he was talking and watching Dota the entire time. So kudos to Bruno, by the way. A big shout-out to him for some really great performances yesterday. That multicast is really coming along. I don't know if you had a chance to watch it or not.
Yeah, I had it on one of my computers, and my TV was going, and I had something on in the bedroom all day. Like my whole house was Dota all day yesterday. And I had one of the rooms had the multicast on for when I was just like, I'm not working anymore. I'm just going to go lay down for a little bit or whatever. Multicast, I dig it. I like it.
I think it serves its purpose, and it's got a nice functionality to it. It's also nice, like, they get to show us every bit of action. So watching the multicast, for instance, during the DK, IG, Newbie, Liquid game was amazing, because it was literally action, action, action.
I suspect that Valve implemented the instant replay when they did, specifically because they had plans to have that multicast going. So.
Absolutely. On a side note, I did find out, I think it was last night or the night before, that all of the overlays we've ever built for every tournament we've ever cast are now broken. So that's because they changed the drafting screen, so all of the drafting overlays no longer work.
Oh, well, I don't use those anymore anyway because new seasons get new overlays. So.
There you go. So that said, let's see. 8 hours from now, pick for me is probably going to be the EG versus newbie game.
100% on there with you. That was my pick as well.
So that should be actually, that's going to be a really good game. And I think that that's going to be one of those games. It's going to be top teams that really need to beat each other to guarantee their seeds going into the next round. So that's going to be not only a good game, but it's also going to be an important game for both of those teams. Both teams who are not nearly as high right now on the stat sheets or in the rankings, I guess I should say, as they want to be. They're sitting at 7 and 8 with the exact same score. So they need to. Each of them needs to win this.
If newbie wins that, this is pending a couple of placement matches, but based on what I'm predicting, if newbie wins that game, they should go to number 2 slot. Yeah. If EG wins, they'll probably be in 3 slot, maybe 4. There's a lot more factors involved in EG because there are a lot of more matches that would be between them. They could land anywhere from 3 to 6. I would expect them higher up on that, though, if they win. So 3 to 4 is probably where they would end up.
So yeah, basically winning that guarantees you looking at the green, possibly the light green section, as I like to say, and the main event opened. So just so everybody knows, just real quick, the higher you finish on the brackets, the better off you are, because the less games you have to play in Phase 3. If you finish in the top 2, it means all you do is go straight to the main event's winner's bracket, and you get to sit back and watch everyone use their pocket strategies as they try to survive. So getting to the top is a big deal, and that's why those two are going to be fighting for that pretty gosh darn hard. 10 hours from now, we're going to have the next round of games, and I think the matchup to watch is probably going to be Empire Alliance.
Man, we are on the same page. That is 100% my match to watch as well.
Look at that. So there is no need to worry about spoilers for JD, since apparently all the calls are exactly the same. But it's going to be a good match. Empire has not been playing their best, and I think that that's something that we can't take overly seriously. They had a rough day yesterday. Empire is a team who in the past has had rough days in these LAN tournaments, but is also a team that is dynamic and aggressive and can really mount comebacks in day 2 and day 3. So I expect to see Empire playing 100 times better. Alliance, another team that was just not on their game yesterday, but a team that we know from experience can go back to the locker room, say, what did we do wrong, and come back out swinging. So that should be a great game. Both are going to be fighting for their lives because of the fact that right now they both have a minimum of 3 losses between them. So they need to win their games going forward. That's going to be a pretty good one to watch.
Yeah, I think that is going to be one of those teams can no longer reasonably expect to get preferential seeding after that match. Whoever wins that can still tooth and nail their way up into green, as you like to say. They can tooth and nail their way up into sort of the upper seeding. The loser of that probably will not have that option unless they absolutely kill it for the rest of the group stage, which is not likely.
Absolutely. Agree with that. So moving on to the 11 hours. Out from here, we're going to have a pretty good matchup. I think my choice, and this is a tough one here, there are 2 phenomenal games going to be going on. I think VG Fnatic is going to be a darn good game, and I think Navi EU versus EG is going to be a huge one. So I assume fan favorite-wise, we're going to see every single person watching Navi versus EG, but don't take your eyes off of Fnatic VG because that's going to be a good one too.
Yeah, and Navi EG is my pick there. Bear in mind that EG has won that matchup for 80% of matches and 75% of games this year. So EG has a huge statistical, trending advantage. They regularly tear through Navi. And Navi is not placed so well here that they can really afford to be giving up games. I expect them to pull out some strategies for this specific match that we may not have seen before.
And when we look at so real quick, to touch on the VG Fnatic thing, right now, if you look at the bracket, VG is sitting at number 2, Fnatic is sitting at number 9. So Fnatic is currently 1 away from elimination. Now, that's incredibly misleading because VG has 3 wins and 1 loss, whereas Fnatic has 3 wins and 2 losses. So really the difference between being in the literal danger zone of going home and being in second place right now is a differential of 1 loss and maybe even a game not played. So when when you look at the brackets and you say, I don't know if I want to watch that because that team's sitting at 9 right now. What do they have to play for? At the end of the day, the entire 1 through 10 is incredibly close together, with maybe the exception of Cloud9, who has a nice little cushion to work with going forward. So that's going to be a good game, I think, because Fnatic should take 1 or 2 early on, and then we'll see how VG does, and they should be battling, I think, for the 5-6 slots, most likely at that point in the day. So those are, I think would be pretty good matches to watch. Moving on to the next section, when we're gonna have the matchups here.
This is about as far as I got when I was doing my pre-listing, just because the farther out you go, the more prediction you have to do in your head to see where these guys actually going to be at that stage of the day.
Yeah.
Because what is the best match to watch is, of course, somewhat dependent on how important the match is for people's placement.
Right.
And at this point in time, we're getting out to the point where we're basically speculating beyond at least my comfortable means. If I'm looking at just player skill or just like equivalently skilled teams for this next matchup,
and I think the next couple of picks that I want to put out there are teams that are going to be exciting to watch, that play together well, that should just be good as a viewer to sit down and burn an hour.
I think Cloud9 Newbie is probably that match.
Cloud9 Newbie. Cloud9 Newbie is at that 11-hour sequence. Yep. So Cloud9 Newbie is going to be a pretty good one. I think that should be. That's at the same time, keep in mind, as the Natus Vincere Evil Geniuses, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and then the slot following that, we'll just do some real quick run. I think Cloud9 Team Liquid is going to be a really good game. Both of those teams are on the top of the rankings. Both of those teams have a very aggressive play style, and it should be a pretty good one. At the same time, Alliance versus Na'Vi should be a good game, because Alliance is going to be clawing their way out of the pits of the brackets.
That's
hopefully.
their goal anyway.
Now, if Alliance loses 2 or 3 to start their day, that game, the Na'Vi versus Alliance game, is completely irrelevant, because Alliance will essentially be locked out at that point. So, pick for me is Cloud9 Team Liquid, just because you're going to guarantee that you'll see 2 teams that are still fighting for seed and have a very interesting play style.
I agree.
So that's for that next grouping. The grouping, which I think is second to last, the Newbie Vici should be a pretty good matchup. I think that's going to be my pick. Both of those teams should still be fighting for their seed positions, and Newbie's got a little bit of a lighter schedule today, so I think Newbie will take a couple of wins, and Vici might take a loss or 2, and they will be fighting for that 1 through 4 position. So that'll be a good game.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Alliance Fnatic should also be a good game. I think if I'm forced to choose just one, I'd go with Vici and Newbie, though.
Absolutely. Assuming, and once again, Alliance games are going to be amazing as the day goes on if they are winning. If they are not winning, then they just don't matter as much. And that's going to be a huge issue. So in the final groupings of games, the last stuff is going to happen at like 11 o'clock tonight. Hard to project who's still going to be in it, but I think that the best game to watch at that point will almost certainly be Empire Invictus, as I think that the other 3 games I think aren't going to have a player in them who is still qualifying, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I honestly think this is a pretty weak grouping. This is probably the point in time where I just put it on in the background and go do something else, catch up. Like, I think that these 4 are the weakest for us in terms of spectators.
I agree.
But of course, there could be a big upset for Mouse Newbie. That's entirely possible.
Mm-hmm.
There could also be a big upset for Empire IG. I expect that to be a little bit less possible, but it is still possible.
And once again, it comes down to who's winning and who's losing, which brings me to an interesting point, as I want to ask you about this. The big downside, in my opinion, of these sort of round-robin qualifiers is, how does someone being eliminated? And right now we're looking at Aero Gaming, for instance, and even Alliance being in a real danger of just not being relevant in day 3 at all, or even at the end of day 2. How does that affect the rest of the tournament?
Obviously psychologically it affects the tournament a lot, because those players, once they know that they're going to be going out, are not going to be playing as hard. Mm-hmm. And this is, I don't want to stereotype, this is typically not as much a problem in the Eastern scene as it is in the Western scene. True. Although we do sometimes see, like, there was a just refusal to play out of some tier 2 Chinese team for a fairly decently sized Chinese tournament a little while ago. They got knocked out essentially, but they still had to play through the group stages, and they literally intentionally fed. That's the sort of thing that I don't expect to happen on the international. People are going to want to conserve their honor, especially considering all of these guys are being sponsored by major gaming houses. Like,
Right.
none of them are independent. That being said, people, yeah, they legitimately will not be playing as hard if they know that they have absolutely no chances, which helps people who are getting easier schedules later in the event.
Yep.
Because their easier schedule gets even easier if their opponents don't really care.
Which, to me, speaks really strongly for Liquid seeding going into the finals.
Yeah.
I think
they got most of their hard matches out of the way day one.
I mean, for instance, their last game tonight's against Arrow, and all respect to Arrow for coming out of the SCA and doing some great work getting into the tournament. They just are the one team that doesn't seem to be playing at the same level this year. Like last year, there were, I don't want to say free wins, but there were wins where the big teams could say, yeah, I'll probably take this one, no problem.
Yeah.
There's not a lot this year. Arrow's been the only one that has really felt that way.
I'd say LGD has kind of felt that
LGD
way.
sort of felt that
LGD
way
has
too.
been kind of thrown under the bus a couple of times.
That's
They're
true.
a really good Chinese team, but I mean, they're not at the stage where they could really consider themselves tier 1 world class yet, I don't think.
Right.
But, they are on the cusp of it. I think maybe next year they'll be there. And they're putting in a good showing, but they're up against literally the most competitive Dota
Two-field in history.
landscape
Yeah.
in history. This is the only, after day 1, it's already the only TI group stage to not have an undefeated team.
That's true. That's a good point. I didn't even think about that. So it's been a phenomenal series, and it's been, for any viewer, it's been amazing.
Yeah.
That said, I think that teams like Liquid are looking like they're going to I think Liquid's going to go in with a top 5 seed, based on the strength of schedule returning, plus the fact that people are going to start to play themselves out. So today, there will be teams, I don't want to say officially eliminated, but there will be teams who are so far off of the hunt that they are essentially eliminated from possibly qualifying without some massive upsets.
Yeah. It'll be out of their hands.
It will be out of their hands.
Certainly, unless Arrow and LGD like completely blow everybody away somehow, like they get Mega Space Jam steroids or something.
Yep.
They are essentially going to require everybody ahead of them to lose to other teams, and they're going to need to win all of their games, and it's just not very likely. Those teams, at the end of today, will probably be out of contention.
Absolutely. So expect to see some teams knocked out, and that's about it as far as my Dota summary for today goes. We're running low on time, so I just want to finish up with a quick news wrap out. For those of you who are keeping track, our friend Zach Danger Brown, the Potato Salad Kickstarter, is sitting at a whopping $43,000 to make his potato salad right now, with 23 days left to go. So there's the update on him, and 5 things you need to know. I'll give them to you briefly as I want to get this done in a decent time frame. Immigration's the same thing as yesterday, still going on. More Mideast tensions. Interesting airport security. For those of you traveling, keep in mind that they are now forcing you to turn your cell phones on when you board planes, and it is becoming kind of an issue. Like if your battery's dead when you try to get on the plane, you can't turn your phone on. They will just take it from you and maybe make you get it on your way back. I don't know how they're shipping it, but they literally...
What is the purpose of that?
There's intelligence about something with explosives and cellular phones.
So a cellular phone detonated IEDs is what they're worried about?
Something in that capacity, or even the cellular phone itself becoming the IED.
So, perfect. They'll make you turn it on and blow everybody up.
Yep, in the waiting room instead.
Yeah. What a plan.
So that's the big one. I think the other big one to talk about is Germany versus Argentina. Netherlands were knocked out. The finals are going to be Germany versus Argentina as we roll into the finals. It was a pretty good game yesterday. Nothing to write home about. Nothing like the Brazil 7-1 debacle. The Argentina did go into a tense shootout yesterday over the Netherlands, so that was worth watching. That said, they emerged, and it's going to be a good old-fashioned 2 soccer powerhouses in the World Cup final. And that's pretty much it. Not a lot of news yesterday, so we'll just leave you with those. We'll leave you with the wrap-ups. Do you have any parting thoughts before we end the cast today?
Go ahead and stop by Join Dota. Like I said, we've got a lot of, you had mentioned how hard Bruno's working. We've got, basically 4 writers doing all of the work at Join Dota, keeping live updates on every single game. And they are working really, really hard to make sure that you guys, if you're at work, if you're on your cell phone, if you're on the bus, or if you just want to have something open while you're watching one game and you don't want to deal with the multi-hub, It's all there for you. We're keeping everything as up to date as possible. I'm going to continue to do several analysis pieces before the games even start today. So those are going to be going out from me. And if you want updates on all of that stuff, go over to my Twitter at GotCowDota.
Awesome. So that said, guys, I'm going to play some music for you, and we'll be in Twitch chat, and then I'll cut it for a little while so we can get the next thing set up. But at the end of the day, that's what you need to know, and enjoy the games. I'll be around if you want to chat on the channel, etc. But enjoy the sounds of Uncle Willie K, and as always, Toffees out.